American film director Brian De Palma, who I'm just about to meet for the first time, seems to rub people up the wrong way. His Al Pacino picture, Scarface, got him death threats from Cuban Americans. Feminists marched against his surrealistic slasher thriller, Dressed to Kill. Through most of the 70s, middlebrow critics scoffed or fulminated at what they saw as his misogyny or callousness. Even some of the good ones called him silly, incoherent, close to insane. Censors forced many cuts. As his career moved from the late 60s radical comedies to the 70s Hitchcockian thrillers to epic gangster pictures of the 80s and 90s, some people felt that De Palma was doing something special. I liked Pauline Kael's phrase, the alligator grin, in his movies. It captured their gallows humour. One French critic said that for De Palma, existence is an extended love affair with death. In Carrie, he launched the career of John Travolta. In Greetings and Hi Mom, he discovered Robert De Niro. For over 30 years, he stuck to his cinematic guns and remained obsessed by certain ideas and techniques. His latest film, Snake Eyes, is bursting with those ideas and techniques. He's made bad films like Obsession and Phantom of Paradise and the recent Mission Impossible. But Brian De Palma is, I think, the true Baroque artist in mainstream American cinema. And so I'm told he's a grumpy bastard. We'll see. Here he is.
Look at it. Here's NYU, where Scorsese and I met.
Yeah.
Right in that building around the corner there. And it's one of the really, truly fascinating cities to live in.
There's something about this city, though, which is not comfortable.
Where do you come from?
I come from Belfast, which isn't a very comfortable city either. Okay, tell me about your father.
My father was a workaholic. He was a very well-respected orthopedic surgeon.
You've said before, I think, in interviews that his job introduced you to the idea of blood and everything.
Well, it's just, some people are very squeamish around, blood and accident scenes, but I was sort of brought up in them. So I worked in an accident ward when I was very young, and I used to watch my father operate. I'm a very good guy to have around if this car crashes because I'm not thrown by, people's heads smashed into windshields. And I've always used suspense and action and horror in many ways because when you're trying to learn the elements of the form, you are drawn to those particular genres. People have written about me like this. I have some kind of macabre obsession with this stuff, but basically it was a way to learn what is the thing that is best done in cinema.
Oh, yeah.
And suspense and following people and voyeuristic things are particularly cinematic. Like the car chase is purely cinematic, so you are drawn to things that maximize the elements of the form you're working in, and I think about that quite a lot. That's why sequences in Hitchcock stay with us so long. They sort of touch something that we haven't seen in any other artistic form.
Yeah, remember you said Hitchcock is grammar. I thought that was very good. What about your mother? What was she like?
My mother was kind of charming, and at the same time she could be very judgmental.
I remember an interview with your mother where she said Brian was a mistake. You weren't a planned birth and everything, and it sounds as if you felt a bit left out in the sort of family drama. Is that true?
Yes.
Tell me about that.
Very much so. My older brother was a very brilliant electrical engineer. And my mother was very much in love with him. And my other older brother, Bart, and myself were basically not paid the attention we thought we deserved because of my mother's infatuation with my older brother. And that never really changed.
So how did you feel about that? Resentful?
Well, it trains you quite well to be in the movie business. Basically, because you're used to a tremendous amount of rejection. You develop a very thick skin, and you basically do things because you feel they're right in terms of what you believe, and you don't really pay much attention to what anybody else thinks because you were brought up in a household where nobody particularly cared what you were doing.
That makes you sound very kind of locked in and self-sufficient, do you think you are?
Terribly self-sufficient.
Okay, we're here. Let's get out and we'll keep talking. Is it relevant for a moviegoer to know about your childhood?
Oh, I think so. I read biographies of directors. But, you know, when you do a lot of publicity, they're just, they have you there to kind of give the text explanation of the movie. And then they ask the movie stars about, you know, who you married and who you're dating and what's your next movie. That's the big publicity machine in America. It's all driven by celebrity.
When did you get into movies? What are your early memories of intense cinematic experiences?
In terms of actually going to the movies, I was more of a kind of a computer nerd in high school, built computers, won science fair, so I wasn't like your cinema freak. And I really wasn't introduced to sort of, you know, foreign cinema or classic cinema until I got to Columbia, here in New York.
What age were you when your mother discovered your father was having an affair?
Oh, I would say it was when I was in my teens. And my father was basically unhappily married, and he found another woman and basically stayed married to him for the rest of his life.
But your mother took it bad, as far as I understand.
Oh, yeah.
And she attempted to commit suicide, is that right?
Yes, yes, she did.
And how did you react to that?
Well, I was very much on her side, and I felt very badly for her. And consequently, all the information I got was from my mother, because my father was sort of cut out of having any kind of contact with us, really. And so only years later did you sort of get the other side of the story. As you know, there are always two sides to all these stories.
And what's relevant to your work, of course, is that it sounded as if you tried in some way to observe your father during his affair. I read you climbed trees and tried to photograph him. Is that true?
Yes, it is.
And given that there's so much voyeurism in your work, that seems to come from those experiences. Is that overstating?
Well, I just think cinema is a very voyeuristic form, and the point of view shot is something that's very particular to cinema. So again, to me, it is like a car chase. It's trying to find out what are the things in cinema that are particularly a basic element of the things that you work with, and this camera that's sort of watching us as we're talking. We're pretending it's not there. It's sort of, who is that person over there? But he's watching us, and the whole audience is there watching. And if I look at that camera, I'm looking right into the eyes of the people watching. They don't like that. They rather would have me look at you. So they seem to be observing us, and we don't know that they're there. And that's sort of the convention of cinema that's completely unique.
But few filmmakers emphasize the voyeurism as
well,
much
I
as you
think
do.
few filmmakers emphasize the things that are particularly cinematic. I mean, it's not just the point of view shot, but it's all these things that are the elements of pure cinema that has kind of a lost art, as far as I can see, judging from the things that are being made today.
But it's not wrong to say, surely, that this experience in your youth, in your adolescent, and the idea of peeping on your father, trying to tape his phone calls, yes? Did you dress up, or did you try and stalk him at night with a knife? Is that a true story? Broke into his office?
Yes, that is a true story.
These are all traumatically disturbing things which must have in some way intensified your fascination with the POV shot.
Well, in the fact that you are observing information, you have kind of like a little detective, and I sort of put this in one of my movies. Yeah, you're kind of collecting information, but it's a little different than making the sort of simple analogy between, you know, observing a kind of an emotional situation in your family and suddenly say, this is where, you know, the peeping Tom, the sort of voyeuristic aspect of cinema that interested him. I think this sort of observer over there, the camera, is something that maybe I was a little more aware of because I'd done it in my life. But it is an element of cinema that is one of the most important ones. And also the close-up.
If the close-up and the point of view shot are key elements of cinema, are there things that cinema can't do?
Well, there are many things that cinema do that are just like recording. Well, that's not particularly cinematic. It doesn't take a genius to do what that guy's doing over there. He's just basically shooting a shot of me talking to you. Now, where is the art in cinema there? Except he's recording what I'm saying to you. And that's what you see in a lot of cinema today, and that's why it's so flat and boring.
What excites you about your new film, Snake Eyes?
Well, I've done a lot of using the long take, and the whole movie starts with an extremely long take that's, close to 15 minutes, but it's really 3 takes broken up, but it looks like one long take. I'm trying to show the space that he's going to be inhabiting in the next 2 hours of the movie.
Tyler! Woo! Neptune high, right? Check it out, right here! Go see Devils! You and me, Tyler!
I'm very interested in the ideas in Snake Eyes because I grew up close to Atlantic City. I saw the whole town go through its, growings into a casino town, and how the casino town, in fact, destroyed the town that was there. Most casinos are built in deserts because everything's dead already. It all takes place inside the world of the casino, and I consider that world like hell, because it's completely cut off from light and life. It's, all it is sort of phony lights and sounds going like everybody's winning all the time, and you're given this false sense of, isn't this great? Meanwhile, your soul is being stripped as your pocket is being emptied.
It sounds very biblical. Let's have a look at it.
All right, I will give you a hint. I know you really want one, and it's going to keep you very, very warm. Give me 5 seconds, I'll call you back. Hey, Jimmy George, wait up a sec.
Hey, come on, Rick, I got people waiting
That's
for
Tyler!
What are you looking at?
That's Tyler!
me. You think you go?
The AC executioner standing right in front of me.
Now, what I've done is jump forward a bit and put another clip on.
Okay.
Hey, Jimmy's got something really interesting to tell you. Listen to this.
Now,
How do these 2 clips relate to each other?
well, this is from the fighter's point of view, and this is part of his first flashback, and this sequence we saw in the beginning.
Hey, that's Tyler!
Hey, what are you looking at?
Now we're seeing it from the fighter's point of view. We haven't seen the fighter yet. This is as he's remembering things. And suddenly when he looks at yourself, he looks at himself in the camera, and that's the first time he comes on screen.
And ditto again.
Cash means something to me. Words mean something to somebody else.
All right, don't move. I'll be right back.
And that's the beginning of that first Steadicam shot, and this is where you see the objective sequence from Nick's point of view. And here it is from the fighter's point of view. And that sequence was his reflection.
How much were you into the casinos for?
Enough.
So, unusual. Already looking there, it feels like at the beginning of the film, you show us something that happens, and then you
I show
circle
us
back.
Nick Cage's world,
Yeah.
Rick Santora's world, and everything's shot with the camera pointing in at him. And then as you go into the movie, you start to see what Rick was seeing, and that's sort of the structure of the movie. First the camera's pointing in, and as the movie goes on, the movie's camera starts pointing out, so you see what he actually saw instead of how he reacted to what he saw.
This feels like something that is in many of your films, this idea of returning and looking again at something. We've got it in Blowout. Yeah?
Yeah. Well, Blowout, he's trying to remember what happened. He's trying to remember what he heard. So he's getting information and then recalling in his head. But this big sequence in Blowout where he actually syncs the sound up. There were 2 sounds when the tire blew out. And of course you realize it's the shot that blew the hole in the tire, which is sort of the key to the crime.
Great.
In Snake Eyes, you're basically seeing different reflections and memories of the same incident, which is the assassination, which is something, you know, that's all come from the Kennedy assassination, where you saw all these points of view of what happened when Kennedy was shot. And it's also the big brackets around it of the Zapruder film, which sort of was the guy, objective sort of look. I mean, they're looking at those frames one by one, trying to figure out when he was hit, which bullet hit him where, why is his head going that direction when it should be going that direction.
It's also reminding me in some way of Antonioni's Blow Up.
Yes.
That was an important film for you.
Yes, it was an important film because, again, it's a great cinematic idea. It's a great cinematic idea, the trying to reconstruct what happened from a photograph, which is very much what they were doing with the Zapruder film. Of course, the more you blow it up, the less you can sort of figure out what's going on. This is marvelous. I mean, this is a marvelous sequence. She's looking, what she's seeing, that's, you know, it was a brilliant idea. You know. That's cinema. It's great cinema, silent, all being driven by images. There's nothing like it.
Let's jump to your film Hi Mom, which was made in 1970. It seems to say something about what your political feelings were at the end of the 60s, early 70s. What does it tell us about those feelings?
Well, Hi Mom, the idea from Hi Mom came basically when I was out promoting Greetings, and, you know, Greetings was sort of very kind of a radical view of what was going on in America at the time. But as I found myself on programs much like this, I'd be talking about the revolution and why are we in Vietnam, and one seemingly radical political idea after another. And then they would cut to a commercial and somebody would come on and said, buy some Evian. This is really great stuff. It'll make you feel really good. Now let's get back to Brian De Palma discussing the revolution. So as you can discover in America, no matter what it is your political views are, you just become part of the selling machine. So it doesn't make any difference. So, you know, and Hi Mom, no matter how radical you try to be in order to try to change the system, capitalism has found a fascinating way of dealing with that is to make you rich. Then every idea is a product in capitalism. And once it's a product, and once it's on television, once it's selling things, then it absolutely has no sort of emotional or revolutionary feeling anymore. It's just another product. Oh, this is the phony knit journal, which is like educational television. And De Niro's realizing that the radicals are basically all getting murdered here by the middle class people. And the only way really to deal with this is to blow up the co-op. And that's what he does ultimately.
Oh. Now stay tuned.
Here's a good idea. Destroy the television. Shoot it. Blow it up.
And at this stage, you did some pre-editing on Mean Streets, Scorsese's film, did you?
Yes, I worked on one of the sequences with Harvey and Bob in the back room.
That improv?
Yes.
You were being quite cynical there about fame and the way that capitalism co-opts everything, but you wanted fame desperately yourself, did you not? That's why you went to LA.
We need money. We need money to make these movies, so we have to become famous and successful.
Marty Scorsese admits that he was desperate to become a big sort of name auteur filmmaker. Were you?
That part of it has never been of much interest to me. One has to become famous, basically, in order to get the money to make the movies. To me, it's a byproduct of what you do. I mean, I look at this guy up here and I say, God, who is that? You know, it's Brian De Palma. You know, I go to film festivals by myself all the time and go see movies. People look at me and say, what are you doing here? I say, I like to go see movies. Is there anything wrong with that? It's like, why would a director of my stature be found at a film festival unless he was selling a movie?
Why did you accept an invitation on this program if you are quite cynical about the process of publicizing films and things?
Oh, I'm not cynical in the sense that I realize that I have to be out there talking about Snake Eyes so people will go see it, because I want to be able to make other movies. You know, but I only do it when the movie comes out. You won't find me on these programs between releases.
Yeah. So we couldn't have dragged you on here if you didn't have a movie to sell?
Absolutely not. I'm here to sell Snake Eyes. I can talk about myself, and you can dig around in my life, and I can tell you intimate stories, but basically, go see my movie because it lets me make other movies.
Yeah. That sounds very sort of... you feel so part of the treadmill there, you know, and yet you surely...
Well, why are you here?
I'm here because I like talking to filmmakers.
You have a genuine interest in cinema.
I have a genuine interest in cinema.
Don't you want to be famous too? I mean, your face is on the screen too.
That's not my reason for being here.
Oh.
My reason for being here is... I'll tell you why, Brian. Because so much of film culture in Britain is about the script. It's about reviewing the script. It isn't about the visual aspects of filmmaking. And your films are about the visual
Hopelessly
aspects.
Misunderstood in your country.
Absolutely. I'm going to talk to you about that. It's the sort of maverick quality in some of your work. Not all of it. There's some of you, I think you've made some terrible films. I hope it's okay to say that. But I think that at its best, your work dares to be formal, baroque, these things. That's why I'm here.
A truth seeker.
And
I love it.
Also because I rather like Snake Eyes.
Why, thank you.
Anyway, now that we've got this nice polite tone with each other, let's move on. The next film that I've got a clip of is Carrie. In the 70s, you abandoned some of the political agitation of your 60s work. Why is that? Why did you make Carrie?
Because I was trying to get into the world of commercial filmmaking, and I sort of begged them to give me a studio job, and that was Carrie. A little slow motion before she gets covered with pig's blood.
Now, it's a surprise if you watch your work chronologically to come across a sequence like this, because it's tender and lyrical in some way. In fact, this is the first film, critics said this is the first film of yours which was moving.
Well, Obsession had similar stuff in it. That was also came out in '76. That was shot before.
But did you purposefully try to make the audience empathise with Carrie more?
Absolutely. Absolutely. You had to empathise with her, or the movie wouldn't have worked.
Yeah.
You had to care about, you know, the ugly duckling at school.
Yeah. Carrie's famous for using split screen.
I don't really like the way I use split screen in Carrie, because it was put in an action sequence. It's not the way to use split screen.
What is the way to use split screen?
Counterpuntal action, parallel action running against each other. It's the way I used it in Snake Eyes, where you can sort of have the audience concentrating on two things happening simultaneously without resorting to intercutting all the time.
Why do more directors not use it?
It's a kind of very stylized technique, and it really is only... It's very good for conveying kind of complicated information, but it's also good for showing things that are happening simultaneously from different points of view.
Is there a danger that when you split the screen and everything, you remind the audience that they're watching a movie, that you take them out of the emotions of the picture?
Yeah, that's always that possible, but you can say that about taking a top shot or a very low angle.
Yeah.
I mean, anything that goes against the kind of realistic form can pop an audience out of a picture, supposedly, but it's never bothered me.
Yeah. Okay, I've got, still on Carrie, I've got the ending here. There are a few specific things I want to ask you about it.
I wouldn't let her go to the funeral.
More romantic slow motion.
Tommy,
Amy walking backwards.
Yes, now this is exactly what I want. Why did you have her working backwards?
Because I wanted everything to look a little odd.
That car has just gone backwards, didn't it?
Well, this whole shot is backwards. Yeah. People think it's forward action, but in reality, everything is backwards. And they don't. There's something odd about it, but they don't quite know what.
Where did you get that from? Did you know of another sequence in a film that had done it?
That's a good question. It's so long ago. I've seen it recently in a video, but I don't remember.
Nick Roeg's performance does it at the end. The people are toddling backward. Could that have been? That was before this, wasn't it? Yes, it was.
Yeah, but I don't know how it was used. I don't want to let people know it's backwards.
Yeah, but neither did he. He just wanted to create an unease, I think.
Well, when was that?
It was 69, 70. Would you have seen that, maybe?
Could be. Could be.
Is it also true that this was shot day for night, this stuff?
Yes, it was.
Or night for day? Why did you do that? Why did you do that?
Again, to make it look odd. We're in the middle of the night here, and we've got big lights out here in this field, making it look like day. That's not like real daylight, but it looks like daylight. So you don't know what's not real about it, but there's something slightly unreal about it. Oh, here it comes.
See, the way you're joking about that, that's the alligator grin thing, isn't it? Is there something sort of sadistic about playing with the audience in that way?
Well, people don't go on roller coasters, I think, to be serious.
Yeah, but they know it's coming up, don't they?
Yeah, but they do it as a sense of fun at the same time. I mean, I was always amazed at how much everybody was so scared by it.
Yeah. The next sequence I've got is, I think, one of your best. It's the gallery sequence in Dress to Kill. What's that there for, that sequence? Very slow, very intimately...
It's based on an idea I had. I used to go to a lot of art galleries, and this idea of picking somebody up in an art gallery and shooting it like a kind of a tango was something I had sort of experienced myself. And it took me years to figure out what movie to put it in, but I have a lot of ideas like that. They sort of rattle around in my mind, and then I have to find a movie where they fit. We have this nice wide screen shot. And he's ignoring her. She can't understand it. So she's going to show him that she's married. She's not really interested anyway. That glove, which is going to figure as an important element later on. This is all shot in the Philadelphia Museum. I loved watching Angie walk through that museum. Tracking point of view shot.
Do you understand why this film was so controversial?
Yes, because we had a particularly brutal murder of a woman in an elevator. What it was essentially a kind of very intricate visual exercise. Obviously, it played on certain kind of basic, sexual themes. But if the movie's going to last, it's going to have to stand on its own, outside of the political context in which it was seemingly conceived in.
I know in Britain it came out at the time of the Yorkshire Ripper serial killer
Right.
controversy, and that, of course, added to the heat around this film. But it seems to me, again, you're using all the techniques of cinema to engage people so much with this woman before you slash her to bits, or not, but the film does so in an elevator.
Well, I've been asked that question a lot. Why is all this violence toward women? And basically, well, I think it's quite simple, is that if you're making a suspense movie and you put somebody in peril, it's a woman somehow looks more vulnerable than a man. And I like photographing women better than men.
Why does a woman look more vulnerable than a man?
Because she's smaller, weaker.
How come so many of Hitchcock's people in peril are men, like Cary Grant and things like that? Hitchcock obviously thought that those men.
Well,
aren't
what
like
about
as
Psycho? I mean,
Sure,
come
I know.
on. And
the films of Hitchcock that you
what
prefer,
about
they-
Notorious?
Yeah.
No, please. I
know.
mean, he's
And
got
Suspicion, there are lots of
he's
them.
got
There are
tons
lots
of
of them.
women in peril.
Absolutely, but it works for men too, doesn't it?
If you like photographing men,
Yeah.
why does certain artists paint nude men or paint nude women?
Yeah.
I like to photograph women.
I think I heard you say somewhere, compare some of these films, like particularly Dress to Kill, to Buñuel's films.
Arrête! Je t'en prie, arrête, dis-le, me lâcher!
There's the same feel of the way you're photographing Dickinson to the way Buñuel would photograph Catherine Deneuve or something.
Au secours!
Tais-toi, gars!
Yeah, they're beautiful. You know, and you just
Allez,
love
venez.
photographing them and putting them in situations that can justify you photographing them.
Tirez. Ne crie pas. Si tu cries, je te tue, tu m'entends?
Pierre, Pierre, je t'en supplie. Je te demande pardon, Pierre. De tout mon cœur.
Jumping forward to Casualties of War, 1989, some people said it was almost like an apology for the way that your women suffered in previous films. Was it?
No. That was basically, a very emotional movie because it was based on a real incident, a movie I'd been trying to get made for 20 years. And there's a very kind of brutal rape in it, and was trying to find a way of doing it so it didn't become, became kind of more metaphorical rather than kind of a physical. And because rape on film is, again, like car chases in many ways, has been done a million ways. It's not like love scenes. They're very difficult to do because, unless you have kind of a dramatic context for it. I remember the most moving rape I think I ever saw was in Two Women, the De Sica picture, about the same time. Virgin Spring came out, and they were both very effectively used, and I was just trying to find a way of shooting it so it didn't, otherwise the sort of physicality of it didn't sort of blow it out of the sort of great sorrowful feeling about the whole movie, and I thought I found a sort of very simple way of doing it in a series of dissolves. It's sort of, all shot through the point of view of Michael Fox watching it from this place where he's supposed to be standing guard.
You gonna watch? Take security, Erickson. You get security.
This is very disturbing to watch.
Who's next, man? Not you, man. Wish we had some beers, man, I'd really like an ice-cold beer, man,
Such a hard movie to make. It took so long to make it. It's full of so much sorrow.
Bad enough. Wish we had a beer, huh, Sarge? Don't you wish you had a beer? Are we gonna flip a coin for who's next or what?
Diaz is next.
Well, when am I up, Sarge?
At the clock.
Let's last.
Move it, Diaz, goddammit, move it.
Wish we had a goddamn beer, man. We gotta have some beer.
Now, you would find that rape scene more difficult to watch than the elevator scene in Dress to Kill. Why?
I don't know, there's something about Casualties of War which that you know is based on a real incident. These are actually, all this actually happened. You feel so sympathetic about this, this poor girl that's kidnapped by these soldiers, and what they're doing is essentially, in many ways, they're as tortured as she is. And it's just like a terrible situation that just gets worse and worse. Well, something like Dressed to Kill is, again, kind of a roller coaster ride. Again, you're kind of constructing very kind of canny visual sequences to give the most dramatic impact. It's not essentially built on characters. This piece is Casualties of War is all about the various characters.
I hate the army.
This ain't the army. This ain't the army, Sarge.
Yea, though I walk through the valley of evil, I shall fear no death. Cause I'm the meanest motherfucker in the valley.
Now, what did that scene mean to you? It was obviously an important scene, especially that feeling of pain quoting from a very wrathful God.
Yeah, he's basically justifying what he's done by, this kind of discombobulated quote of the Bible he comes up with. And I truly feel that the people involved in this incident, we tried to show that they were perfectly justified in what they're doing from their point of view. We tried to show the motivation of Sean Meserve, the character he plays, and why he has been driven to do this terrible thing. And that's sort of kind of a metaphor for our whole experience in Vietnam. We throw these kids over there. It was very important that you show how young they were. They were just kids. They were thrown over there.
I remember when I saw that the scene of Penn quoting this stuff, it made me think in some way but that's like the whole world of Brian De Palma movies. People are heavily punished. There's very little redemption in your pictures, unlike in Schrader or something, pictures or something like that. It seems like an Old Testament God that sort of rules your world. Do you think there's any truth in that?
Well, I kind of believe in redemption, as a matter of fact.
Where is there redemption in your pictures, then?
Well, there's sort of redemption in Snake Eyes.
Yes, that's true. Snake Eyes comes as a lightness about it, but Carrie, everybody gets...
And there's redemption in Casualties of War, which I got highly criticized for.
Where is the redemption?
At the end of the movie, where she says it was a bad dream, but it's over now.
This is a film made in the 1980s, of course. You also made Scarface, films like this. It seems as if you sort of moved away from the thrillers into war movies, gangster pictures. Why?
Well, I think I'd learned all the cinema grammar in the thrillers and the sort of Hitchcock-inspired movies, and now I was trying to bring all the cinematic knowledge to, more character-driven pieces.
Why did you decide to remake Scarface?
I basically liked the script of Oliver Stone's, to tell you the truth. I was never the great fan of Scarface. I thought there was a fascinating performance by Paul Muni in it. Of course, Howard Hawks was one of our great directors. But it looked a little like very much of the period. It's not a movie that I take out and watch a lot, Scarface. Oliver came up with such an inventive idea of placing it in the, Cuban Marielito situation with all these Cuban immigrants, created this huge drug trade in Florida. And I thought, boy, what a canvas this is. And I hadn't had much direct experience with that community, and Oliver took me around and introduced me to everybody, and I said, this can be, it's going to be like some grand opera. So I sort of got very interested in them. This is after he has murdered her boyfriend and taken over his business.
This same idea, the world is yours, is at the end of Howard Hawks' Scarface.
Yes, it is. Well, it's the American dream. You know, you work hard. You know, there's gold in the streets. You just have to go out there and pick it up, which is, you know, one of the sort of lines in Scarface. You know, and this is what these guys did. They came out of these prisons in Cuba and got to Florida and just got into this coke trade and became, you know, billionaires.
One of the things that film critics say about Howard Hawks is that there's no society in his work. It's all about relationships between individuals. There's a kind of social thinness. Now, the way you shoot your film Scarface, again and again, you use back projection, you use constant use of painted backdrops and everything. Why did you flatten the imagery so much?
Well, it's kind of it's a kind of a fantasy world, and if it's driven by drugs, it even becomes more fantastic. You know, there's nothing real about it. It's completely constructed by the imaginings of a drug-addled mind. And the thing about Scarface, it's all about excess. It just gets more excessive, more stylized, and more insane as it goes on, as anybody that's taken a lot of drugs can attest to.
You've got a lot of flattening of imagery in your new film, Snake Eyes. I've got one bit here where Sinisi's walking down the corridors in the hotel. You look as if he's going to walk into the flowers.
Right.
And then that looks painted. Was it painted, or is that...
No, it's a forced perspective. Otherwise, if you walk down that hallway too far, you'd be taller than the ceiling. It's something also used in Mission Impossible. It makes the corridors look a lot longer than they are. You know, you've got to be very canny about how you introduce exterior or interior space. Most people just take a wide shot and they come in and they start shooting close-ups. But I always find that intolerably boring. I think you've got to show the space they're in for some dramatic purpose.
It starts to feel that your films are as much about buildings and architecture and the sweeping space through them.
About spaces, yes.
That opera thing there is in your work, and also this architecture thing, it feels as if those are the pleasures of your films as much as the conventional dramatic pleasures.
Well, I consider the space that you're in is almost as important as what the characters are doing, and how to maximize the cinema, which is that camera photographing us. Because this movie is so filled with images from surreptitious cameras, because you're in a casino in which everything is observed, especially the casino floor, but they observe the elevators, they observe the hotel lobbies. So I figured, well, let's show what happens if you can see what's actually going on in the hotel rooms, which is something they claim they do not do.
Yeah.
And it's just sort of, you know, taking the top off those hotel rooms, those little rooms right next to each other. And even though there's serious things going on, a high school fraternity can still have a beer party.
Okay, I've got another scene. Why did you use Eisenstein's Odessa step sequence at the end of Untouchables?
Well, it's a very good visual idea. This is a scene about a guy getting the accountant, and how does he get him? Train stations, I use a lot of them because they're great spaces. And then I thought, well, I'll have this gunfight on the staircase. How about a baby carriage going down the steps? That'll really dramatize it. You know, metaphor of innocence bouncing in between these people firing at each other.
And also, there was a political into black and white politics and morality in Eisenstein. Of course, the great clash between these two groups. And I think that there's this kind of archetypal clash in some way in Untouchables.
Oh, yeah, it's very definitely the purity of Elliot Ness against the corruption of Al Capone and his minions.
of the critical conventions about your work is that there's too much style and not enough content or something like that. And obviously in the past there have been filmmakers like Joseph von Sternberg and people like that about whom the same things were said.
But it's very rare, and that's probably why directors that work like this are so rarely understood, because number one, there are very few practicing what we do, and so I think it's a kind of a very small fraternity, and most of the people writing about movies come from a kind of literary or dramatic tradition, and they're, you know, character and story and plot and whatever, you know, and you know, the big hole in Vertigo. I mean, you know, why didn't if Jimmy Stewart goes and looks at the body and sees that it's not Kim Novak, the whole thing is thrown out the window. But it really doesn't make any difference, because the other stuff is so engrossingly cinematic that these little things that come out of kind of a very kind of pedestrian plotting don't really harm the brilliance of the work.
So I mean, these questions about plausibility you're not too interested in. I have to say I'm often not too interested in the plausibility of situations, but obviously the critics are, and I think audiences are. People come out and say, oh, I don't believe that. Maybe,
yeah, but when you think of some of the...
Maybe you should go and direct opera where people don't mind about plausibility at all.
It's not a matter that it's implausible. I think the critics sort of lock on something, and that kind of directs the audience. There's a lot of discussion in Snake Eyes about why do we reveal who did it so soon. Well, the problem is it isn't about a mystery about who did it. It's a mystery about a relationship with two people and how finding that out affects their relationship. Yeah. It's not it never, you know, those kind of procedural mysteries are extremely boring, because basically what you're doing is going from place to place, getting information. A little more information, you put it together.
I agree. What's the worst film you've made?
Well, I'm not too proud of Get to Know Your Rabbit, but that was taken away from me and recut, so I really, you know, that was my first experience in Hollywood. Well, I'm not too wild about my comedies like Wise Guys. I mean, they just seem kind of silly, but I was basically, you know, trying to just move into a different genre just to get away from my particular obsessions.
I read that you're hoping to make a film about Howard Hughes, is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. An obsessive, sort of voyeur, a person interested in machinery and technology. It sounds a bit familiar to me.
Yes, I've always been fascinated by Howard Hughes.
A bit like yourself?
Yes, yeah. Well, I don't think I would build planes, but I certainly like computers. I can certainly understand his particular sensibility. Well, but I think you should make movies about people you have some kind of affinity toward.
Is it true that at the end of The Untouchables, you walked off the set without saying goodbye or thanks to the crew?
It's very possible.
Why do you make no effort to be sort of warm?
Well, because I'm very focused at what I'm doing here. And you only have a certain amount of energy. And I try not to dissipate my energy and try to focus very much on my work. So on a set, I'm kind of a very remote figure, because I'm thinking all the time about where that camera is and is that the best place for it to be, because if I don't make the correct decision, I'm going to be looking at it the rest of my life. So I take it very seriously, and I focus very much on exactly what I'm doing. And the technicians that are all working sort of respect that with me. You know, they know I'm there basically to do the job. So I'm focused on that all the time. It's not that I don't respect what these people are doing or what you're doing. It's just that I'm here to be me and try to be very aware of the questions you're asking me. So anything that's going to dissipate from that, I just do not make it part of what I'm focused on.
Okay, Brian, thanks for focusing.
You're welcome.